Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host, GamerK, and I've been a little backed up during this week, so this video is a little late. There will be another video coming out later this week. For my next retro review, I will be going over one of my favorite games as a kid, Battle for Bikini Bottom. This game has been a big part of my life, and it's been one of my favorites as a kid, and it still is now. So, and with the announcement of the Rehydrated series remake coming next year, late next year, let's dive into this retro game. Now, the game starts off very good for a licensed game of a TV series. 3 things a licensed game has to do. It has to have scenarios that correspond with how the show works. It has to be cleverly written throughout the characters and the environments. And 3, what's another one? Oh, yes, it has to be faithful to the fans. So, because with a game like this, if the fans aren't going to buy it, then no one's going to buy it. Now let's continue. The story starts on the premise that Plankton once again has a plan to take the Krabby Patty formula again, and using a machine to create a whole bunch of robot army. A whole robot swarm. A legion of robots is what I'm trying to say. He plans on using them to take over the Bikini Bottom until Krabs gives over the Krabby Patty formula. Unfortunately, the switch was set to don't obey. First off, why'd you have that switch to begin with, Plankton? Man, it's reminding me of the days where Plan Z was actually successful. So, this game is basically a platforming, finding items platform game, but it's done in an adventurous way. The 3 characters you play in the game are obviously Spongebob, Patrick, and Sandy. You alternate between them between certain levels. Spongebob is obviously the most used one. His arsenal contains the bubble stuff, bubble techniques such as Bubble Stomp, Bubble Head Bash, Bubble Wand for a basic attack. Later in the game, he'll get a Bubble Bowl, which doesn't really have the best, because it's got to charge before it can do any damage, which leaves you wide open, and you can't move while you're doing it. The final ability is the Bubble Torpedo, which blows up for after 5 seconds of launch, and it's cool to control, but it doesn't really have that lasting. It coming so late in the game, you use it very little. Patrick gut chucks enemies. He'll body slam them like Snorlax. And he can pick up items and stunned enemies. Unfortunately, he can't jump while he's carrying stuff, so later sections in the game, you're gonna get very annoyed that he can't jump. I'll bring that up when it comes to it. Sandy, on the other hand, is a very versatile character. Her attacks are a karate chop, a kick when she's in midair, and she's used mainly for long-distance gameplay platforming. Because after she double jumps, she's the only character who can double jump in the game. And that ability lets her use her lasso as a propeller in order to glide for further distances for a short period of time. Now all 3 characters have certain missions that they can do within each respective level. But one thing I really love about this game is the blockade system that they're doing to prevent you from power through in the game. Certain areas only allow you to progress if you have a certain amount of shiny objects, which is the currency in the game, which are basically multicolored flowers that have different currency points. And you get them from destroying the tikis and from defeating enemies. And also golden spatulas. You need to collect those throughout each world in order to progress into new levels and, in contrast, completing the game. So the levels are really well designed. They're all based on areas in the game, such as Rock Bottom, the Mermalair, Goo Lagoon, the Dream level that was in that one earlier episode, which they did it amazingly. I believe this level was designed for the creators and the animators to go wild with the visuals, which is, it's stunningly beautiful. If you play the game, you'll know what I'm talking about. For example, in Mr. Krabs' Dream, it's a pile of money, and there's a grill in the middle, and you have to defeat the robots in order to make these Krabby Patties move so you can destroy the devices that reproduce more robots. It's fun. Squidward's Dream has him playing the clarinet, and it's a platforming section on music notes to get his nose, to get the golden spatula. And Patrick's level is the best one. I'm not going to tell you why, but for people who have played the game, you know why. Now, continuing onward, each character has their own strengths and weaknesses that vary for different missions. For example, yeah, Spongebob is mostly there for any of the stealthier sections of the game. And I say stealth when I say you need to be careful of what you're doing. Am I using this too much? I think I am. Patrick is more useful when you have to throw objects, obviously, and that happens a lot for puzzles. Sandy's better for the long-distance stuff, long-distance platforming. So, yeah, I'm glad each character has their own set of areas where they're useful in the game. Let's see. The platforming, I gotta say, in this game is not that difficult at all. It's very easy to get through. In the start. Afterwards, it does get a little tedious because they up the difficulty. And by up the difficulty, I mean darken the area. So you gotta be very careful of where you're going. I'll explain that again level when I talk about the negatives of this game. So the game has 13 levels in total. That includes the hub world, which is basically Bikini Bottom. You know, the neighborhood where the Krusty Krab is, where Shady Shoals is. Basically, those are just the hub worlds where you can relax and venture off into the other areas of the game, which I love those kinds of levels. After doing a level, you can just relax and enjoy the visuals. However, I don't understand one thing in certain levels. They put these red boundary lines where if you go across them, every character walks weird, and all that happens is that hand that comes out during the show and brings you back to the checkpoint. I don't understand why those are there. Why does SpongeBob need boundary lines? The only boundary line he has is going up on the surface. Yeah, I think that actually was good. All the characters in the game are here that were in the show. You get Larry the Lobster, Mrs. Puff, Bubble Buddy, Mermaid Man, Barnacle Boy. Thank God. And a good majority of other characters. Sadly, certain don't make appearances. Squilliam would be hilarious. Bubble Bass would have been okay, I guess. As long as they didn't have a challenge where we had to find pickles. Oh boy. But yeah, the one thing I love about this game is even now, the comedic effect is in this game. The visual comedic effect. For example, in the rock bottom level, when you go to the candy machine, as he did in the game, in the episode, the bus for Bikini Bottom will come and go immediately. That little added detail in each level, where they do some side jokes to the show, it's amazing. And even the dialogue in the game is actually very cleverly written and hilarious at times. Although sometimes it could be a little more, like, I just wish there were more hilarious moments in the game. The mini-missions are by far, so the mini-missions are basically, after you complete a mission, after you complete a mission in each level, you'll get a golden spatula. There are other things to collect in each level too, such as socks for Patrick, and he'll give you a golden spatula if you bring him 10. Steering wheels that are taken off the boats in downtown Bikini Bottom. Fixing the Mermalair computer, which is basically, is actually one of the fun parts of the game, except for the throw fruit mission, where you have to throw the throw fruit. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast, you'll start to get annoying. Doing that mission with Patrick in order to activate these switches just to turn the cable back on. Or the spinning cylinder puzzle. It's challenging if you don't know how to do it well. It's a fun mission. Or But yeah, also in the game, the shiny objects you collect, you can give them to Mr. Krabs a certain amount and he'll give you a golden spatula. Honestly, that's the only reason he's in this game, basically. We do all the work, we give him the money, and he'll give us what we need. Why can't he just give SpongeBob a paycheck like a regular boss? Kids from McDonald's get a better paycheck than he ever does. Am I going to get sued for that? We'll see. The enemies in the game are really hilariously detailed. These enemies are robots, obviously, but they're so comical, like Hammer, who has a stick of ham for a hammer. If you don't get it, please smack yourself in the head so you'll get it. We have Monsoon, who is a flying enemy, who has one of those umbrella hats, and he'll create a thunderstorm to attack you. Glove, who's a saucer-shaped enemy and has multiple glove hands, and he'll spin and attack you. It's really, really fun seeing these enemies in action. I really hope they up the animation for these enemies in the future and maybe add a little more. That's all I'm asking. In terms of boss battles, the boss battles are by far one of my favorite parts of the game, mostly because of how creative they were. There's 2 boss battles in each area, one in one of the levels, and one before you advance to the next area. So you start off in the neighborhood, and then after you complete the Poseidome, you'll go to the next area, and the Poseidome has its own boss. Industrial Park has its own boss, and then there's the final boss. So there's 6 boss battles in total in this game, which isn't a lot, but it's spread throughout a good majority of the game, and I love that. What else do I have to talk about? The locations of the show, like I said, Goo Lagoon and everything feels like you're in that part of the world, and every single level has its own soundtrack that perfectly fits to the game. At each level, it's great. The one thing, now, some of the negatives about this game. There's not a lot. There's definitely not a lot. Replayability, you can do it over and over again, but nothing changes, so that's not a negative. One of my most negative criticisms about this game is the mere fact that the problem in this level, in this game, is the same problem that I talked about in Code Lyoko Quest for Infinity with the volcano sector. 3 of the levels are dark as hell. You can't see anything unless you brighten up the contrast of your TV. That sucks. Especially since said levels are Rock Bottom, Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, or the Kelp Forest, which I believe is everyone's most hated level. Because you gotta jump on the rubber pad leaves. You gotta slide down the tree trunks of the Kelp Forest. And it's all so dark you can't see in front of your own face. And that's annoying as hell. What would be better is if they lightened up these levels with natural lighting. It would have been great, except they didn't. It sucks. Especially the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, where one area you have these 2 sails that you have to do a jump section, and they move, but it's so dark you can't tell where it's going, and you will constantly die during these 3 levels, constantly, because of this dark scheme. Yes, I get it. In the show, they're supposed to be dark. But that doesn't mean you can't lighten it up, light it up with natural lighting from the buildings. Like, do that. I guess in the Kelp Forest you can't really do that. But at least make it so we can see what we're doing. I've seen so many people, and me in general, die on that level constantly. And the whole premise of the Kelp Forest is just find the missing campers. I'm saying campers because Mrs. Puff and everyone else is on a field trip and they didn't tell SpongeBob. Teacher of the Year award. She has earned it. But yeah, the whole game can be completed in about 11 hours if you're going just to complete the game. And for completing everything, it'll take you 14 and a half hours. Yeah. That's pretty much all I gotta say for this game. This is honestly one of my shortest video game reviews because there's not too much to talk about. It's an old game. It's a great game. And for any of my friends on Facebook who are watching this, if you guys have kids and they love SpongeBob, the Rehydrated series coming out next year will make a great late present. If you guys have a PlayStation, the game's coming across the board for Xbox, PlayStation, and the computer. So buy it if your kids like. This is a good recommendation for kids. It's a fun, safe game that won't introduce them to any kind of violence. And the humor in there will hopefully get a laugh out of them. So, GamerK's final verdict for Battle for Bikini Bottom, PlayStation 2, is an 8 out of 10. This game is definitely one of my favorites in general, and it will always be my favorite. I'm hoping that the remaster makes me feel like a kid again, just like the Spyro Reignited trilogy made me feel like a kid again. Well, that's pretty much it for today. I've been so busy this week, I can't even remember what I'm reviewing this week. Okay. Top 13 worst video game bosses. Somebody get the booze. If you're feeling venturous, join me later this week. This is GamerK, logging out. Please help me.